The history of Acadians or French in Lunenburg County is small. Initially, this was the capital of New France, what was called Fort Sainte-Marie-de-Grace, now called Fort Point Museum. 1632 to 1636, it was the capital of New France. And I know that in Lunenburg town, there was a small number of Acadian families there, but by the time the foreign Protestants came, they had gone. The relationship between the French government, who controlled the area, and the people who later became the Acadians was always a very good relationship, because initially the Mi'kmaq helped the French folks survive in Port-Royal, in Sainte-Marie-de-Grace, and in a lot of areas where they came. The French didn't possess the Mi'kmaq land. They, I would say, co-used it or shared it. So there was a different, and there was a lot of alliances formed because of that. And those alliances were because of, the one factor was the fact that the French never really took it over. There was a trading relationship, and that trading relationship was cemented by some of those intermarriages that you spoke about. A lot of folks down in La Baie Sainte-Marie can trace their ancestry to Mi'kmaq folks. When the Acadians came here, I would say the first generation saw themselves as Frenchmen. The second generation perhaps also saw themselves as Frenchmen. By the third generation, and I think the same thing happens with immigrants, they lived in Acadien, so they saw themselves as Acadians. And after all those wars and back and forth, and different people having monopolies and control, most Acadians simply wanted to raise their families, raise their livestock, plant their crops, live their life, practice their religion. The religion became a stumbling block because they had to swear an oath of allegiance to the King of England, which they wouldn't do because it was contrary to their religion. And of course, the other thing about foreign Protestants, when they came to Lunenburg, a lot of those foreign Protestants were French-speaking. The key was that they were Protestant and could be trusted. And a lot of those came from a place called Montbéliard, which was it's now a part of France, but the ruler of Montbéliard was a Protestant. And back in the day, whatever the religion of the ruler was, that was the religion of the subjects. When I first came to Lunenburg, I met Raymond Woodrow, and he had a very large family. They spoke French, and there was another gentleman from Matane, Quebec, who spoke French in Lunenburg, and those were the only folks that I knew that spoke the language. I mean, we were an anomaly.
However, when we first moved here, the Acadian culture wasn't very strong, but as time went on, it became a lot stronger, so that, like in recent years, we found a big difference.
Most of the kids in Lunenburg were of foreign Protestant stock. They were Langelos and Eminos and Crofts, and typical Lunenburg County names that you'd find on the list of settlers that came to Lunenburg in 1753. And coming into Lunenburg Junior Senior High School for an interview for a position that was mostly a history position, which was my degree. And I remember the principal being really impressed that I actually spoke French, because they had a lot of French teachers, but none of them spoke the language.
In my first day of school, when I first went to French class, the teacher we had, he wasn't much of a French teacher. So I put my hand up and I asked him for a book, and I didn't have a book, and he slammed his fist on the table and said, "In this class, we speak French, and French only." And I thought, I didn't think anybody here could speak French, so I rattled it off rather quickly, because as Cape Bretoners, we spoke pretty fast. And he didn't have a clue what I was saying.
The number of Acadians moving into Lunenburg County really increased in the 70s. When you had a lot of people coming in to work at Michelin, a lot of people getting involved, nursing, education, professional jobs, RCMP, to the point now where we have our own French school with approximately 250 students. really linguistically, you have to create culture because you're surrounded by an Anglophone culture, television, internet, and everything. So we bring a lot of culturally aware events into the school. And one of the events we have coming up, we've been doing it for a couple of years, is the Fête Nationale des Acadiens, which we hold in Lunenburg on the waterfront. As I look at our group trying to preserve language and culture, my sympathies go out for our Mi'kmaq friends who are having a hard time maintaining their language. It's a tough battle. They, like Acadians, live in isolated communities. We call them reserves, but they're isolated communities. And a lot of people a lot of Mi'kmaq are off reserve, just like the way Acadians are off their villages. I mean, they're going to Toronto and Halifax and so on. And what both communities are doing is depending on the school system to keep the language alive, and if not the language, elements of the culture alive. And that's very, very tough in a global society. It's a real tough uphill fight to maintain your language and culture, even with schools. So it's very important to maintain Acadian culture and Cape Breton culture and Mi'kmaq culture and all of that stuff, because if we water that down to the point where we're no longer different, we have given away something of value. Diversity is a wonderful thing. It's not a negative thing. It's good for our students. It's good for our province. It's good for our economy. I guess that's something I preach all the time. Diversity is a wonderful thing. I came for 1 year, by the way. My idea was to get some experience and then go back to Cape Breton, but look around Lunenburg County and I kind of liked it. Lunenburg's a fabulous town. Most beautiful town.
Tied to the docks